Hi friends, it's your boy Cranberry Enthusiast, and welcome back to episode 7 of this series in which we are, month by month, going through the entire book of Daniel, and reading it and talking about it, and you are hearing all my wild thoughts and ravings about everything going on here. It's quite the wild experience. And happy July, by the way, if you're watching this in July. It's not July right now, and you may not be watching it in July, so that might be a completely non-consequential point. However, it will be coming out in July, as you probably are already aware. So, without further ado, or a don't, let's kind of get into it. And also, a quick note before we begin. So, we're currently at the halfway point in the book of Daniel so far. If you've been watching the previous episodes, we've gone through the first 6 chapters of Daniel, and there's 6 more chapters for a total of 12 chapters. And I was reminded by a friend yesterday as I was kind of talking about this study, and something that I had heard a really long time ago, but I'd kind of totally forgotten. But it's really cool, and it's the way the book of Daniel is set up, to where it's set up as kind of like a V shape, so to speak. So you have like your V shape here, and then you have, say, the first 6 chapters, so chapters 1 through 6 on this side, and then starting here at the bottom of the second line of the V or whatever, you have 7 through 12, and so chapters 6 and 7 are like connected, so to speak, or parallel in some way, which we'll get into that in a minute. But then chapters 8 and chapter 5, chapter 8 and chapter 5, chapter 9 and chapter 3, all the way so on until chapter 1 and chapter 12. So it's kind of like you go in through the first half with like the narrative 6 chapters, and then you come out kind of in reverse order with kind of visions and prayers and things and some kind of narrative stuff, but it's largely a lot of vision and imagery and stuff, and it's all very interesting. So let's get right into chapter 7 and see what's going on. Alright. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and told the following summary of it. Right off the bat, so this is the first year of Belshazzar, who is the king back in chapter 5, actually. So it's the first year, so he's king of Babylon, and Daniel had this dream and vision. I love how it says he had a dream as he lay on his bed. It's like, okay, where else is he going to be having a dream? Like, on his couch, maybe? I suppose so. But no, just the way things are written sometimes is very, like, the cultural thing. It's the way that you say it, basically. All right, so let's look at this summary. Daniel said, "I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another." So, sounds already like a wild dream. Shout out, fun fact, typically, when you're reading biblical imagery and stuff, when something is talking about the sea, it typically is painting the picture of convoluted chaos, basically. You think back to the first chapter of Genesis, the earth was formless and void, there was chaos in the water, I'm paraphrasing, but there's that. Revelation talks about there being no more sea in the new heavens and new earth, which doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be like an ocean, but that there is not the convoluted chaos that is so present throughout really everything. And you think about in the Gospels with Jesus calming the storm. So anyway, the sea is generally very chaotic, and so anyway, the great sea, so it's some chaos is happening, and we just got 4 great beasts that come up from the sea, which sounds absolutely terrifying. Sounds like a Godzilla times 4, I guess. Well, then first let's see, because let's see what these beasts are all about. Daniel continues, "The first was like a lion, but it had the wings of an eagle." So sounds like a griffin of something or of some point. But I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and set up on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. Very interesting. Yeah. And behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And they said this to it, Arise, devour much meat. I know there's a lot of symbolism here and stuff that I'm not entirely sure what a lot of this means, but I love even just the literal imagery of it. Okay. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the previous horns were plucked out before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like human eyes, and a mouth uttering great boasts. So let's pause right there. There's still some more. But, yeah, so we have some pretty detailed descriptions of these 4 beasts. They sound kind of terrifying. We have the griffin, basically the lion with the eagle's wings, who then is a human mind was given to it. Another beast resembling a bear. Another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird, so like a 4-winged leopard creature. And it also had 4 heads, so a 4-headed, 4-winged leopard creature. Someone who's into art should really, like, someone probably has drawn, like, all these, because this really sounds really cool. I actually, back in my day, back when I was, I think, about 10 years old, I actually did try to, like, sketch out, I think it was actually the beasts talked about in Revelation, but anyway. Then the 4th beast doesn't really say what type of creature it is. It's just terrible, extremely strong. I'm picturing Godzilla with large iron teeth, and with lots of horns. And okay, so and there's some which I think, well, we'll see. I think this thing says the vision interpreted, so later in the chapter we'll get a greater interpretation of the vision. This being said, and just for the purposes of this video series, I'm not going to be going online and trying to find like an article that talks about, like I was saying, the V formation of the Book of Daniel. My phone is going off. A bunch of Discord servers I'm in are very busy right now. But as of right now, I'm not seeing a ton of parallels between Daniel chapters 6 and 7. So if you're interested, you definitely feel free to look it up. I probably will in my free time too, but for the purposes of this study, I'm just seeing what I can see myself and seeing if I can note any parallels just from the text itself without looking for ancillary material, I think is the word for it, extra material that is outside. So I suppose, like, you know, the last chapter had the lion's den, and the 3rd beast is a leopard, which is like a lion, and and the 1st beast was like a lion too, like the griffin. And so, but anyway, let's keep going. So Daniel continues, I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. Ancient of Days here, referring to as another name for God, basically. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out before him. Thousands upon thousands were serving him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court convened, and the books were opened. Then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. As you recall, the single horn and the 4th beast. Daniel continues, I kept looking until the beast was killed, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. Alright, that's just a few verses, but still very thick, and we're still not even done with the vision. But yeah, so we got this kind of heavenly, kind of like awestruck, wild scene about God taking a seat. Thrones are set up. God takes a seat. Talks about God's garments being white as snow and his hair of his head like pure wool. Which really, I'm thinking like I'm envisioning almost kind of like America's founding fathers, the wigs that they had, because a lot of their wigs look like they were made out of wool. But I'm sure it, definitely with Daniel having the vision would be way more impressive than that. But his throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out before him. And it's interesting too here because well, then it depends. Fire is one of the things in the Bible that is, I feel like it has a myriad of things that it kind of represents and symbolizes, and I'm being redundant, but yeah, it's definitely interesting taking that, and then also thinking about a bunch of other passages of fire, like talking about God himself being a consuming fire and stuff like that. So anyway, let's keep going here, and we're getting fairly close to the end of the vision. So I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, honor, and a kingdom, so that all the peoples, nations, and populations of all languages might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. And that's the end of the vision, not the chapter, but we'll continue here. Which, shout out the Son of Man if you're familiar at all with, especially with reading like the Synoptic Gospels, meaning Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the New Testament. Jesus refers to himself a lot as the Son of Man. This is kind of a picture of Jesus coming on the clouds of heaven, being presented before God, and getting the dominion, honor, kingdom, so that all peoples, nations, populations, so that everyone basically might serve him. And yeah, that's really interesting. Like, it'd be let's kind of continue and then get into the interpretation, which is included here in the latter part of the chapter, and see what's all going on here. So as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. And yeah, no kidding. I mean, if I had a dream like that, or like a vision type, like that, probably be pretty disturbing to have. So, but okay, let's continue. I approached one of those who were standing by and began requesting of him the exact meaning of all this. Oh, okay, so I guess this is still kind of Daniel still in the vision, so to speak. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. So this is the guy speaking. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise from the earth. But the saints, or literally holy ones, i.e. God's people, I have a note on that, of the highest one will receive the kingdom and take possession of the kingdom forever for all ages to come. Then I desired to know what the exact, so he says that. Then Daniel resumes speaking. Then I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, and which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of the horns fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth uttering great boasts, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. Let's pause right there. So to kind of recap here. So those 4 beasts, so they represent 4 different kings. And I would guess by a similar estimation, 4 kingdoms, which really kind of is reminiscent of back in chapter 2 with King Nebuchadnezzar's dream about 4 kingdoms, basically. But yeah, so Let's continue here. Daniel continues, I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the Highest One, and the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. This is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and trample it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will humble 3 kings. So it seems pretty, taking a pause here again, seems pretty, like, parallel to exactly what Daniel saw. So there's the fourth beast, which is like the fourth kingdom, and the 10 horns. So 10 kings will arise, maybe all at the same time, Nazgul style, Lord of the Rings, or maybe in succession, so like 10 different kings in a line, and another will arise after them, and he will humble 3 kings, meaning the 3 other horns that, what did it say, 3 of the previous horns were plucked out before it, so he'll humble 3 kings. Let's continue. And he will speak against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time. So that's really interesting. Pause right there, and time, times, and half a time. As I have heard vaguely, and in thinking about the book of Revelation, time, times, and half a time, I think has to do with the number 7, if I remember right, or yeah, in half of 7 rather, meaning if you take time, like 1 time basically, so 1, then times meaning 2, you get 3, and then half a time, 3.5, that's the total, and that's half of 7, and you think about like the tribulation or so. I should really study Revelation again to get all the specific details, but talking about 3.5 years of plenty, 3.5 years of famine, so to speak. And so yeah, so that's what I've kind of heard regarding time, times, and half a time. The secret number is 3.5 there, which kind of makes sense mathematically. But let's continue here. But the court will convene for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Highest One. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the empires will serve and obey him. And so that's, well, I'll just continue on here a little bit. At this point, the revelation ended, says Daniel, and so let's pause there. So that's a pretty wild revelation, vision, and then a revelation of like what that represents. So, and I'm really curious because I'm wondering exactly. First of all, those 4 kings, who would those represent? Do they represent Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome? Kind of the way that at least the NASB subtext implied Nebuchadnezzar's dream back in chapter 2, or are they is this stuff that has happened, or as of now, because obviously Daniel lived a really long time ago, is the 4th beast is it a kingdom that is yet to happen? And like, I'm trying to think of like particularly, yeah, I don't know. See, I'm not a history major. I don't know much about world kingdoms to be able to be like, oh, that fits it perfectly, which I'm sure there probably is some more stuff online, but again, I'm trying to now kind of limit how much I look up things online other than, you know, looking up the definition of words and stuff for this particular thing. So, so yeah, that is definitely something I am wondering about. It makes sense to me that, kind of given Nebuchadnezzar's vision again or dream rather, back in chapter 2, that some of these kingdoms at least have happened. And some of the stuff Daniel saw has happened. And I wonder too about, so the coming of the Son of Man, meaning Jesus, coming upon the clouds of heaven, if that is referring to when Jesus' ascension, in which you can read about at the beginning of the book of Acts. But yeah, because this is Jesus coming up to God, not coming back, basically. Um, so, and yeah, so yeah, and those, I guess, would be kind of my main wonderings, per se. And let's just real quick finish the chapter. Daniel continues, "As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming, and my face became pale, but I kept the matter to myself." Which, shout out, that's a pretty... I love the way that chapter ends. I mean, obviously it's showing, uncertainty and distress, but it's like, it's such a great ending to a chapter. Like, it's kind of poetic in a really interesting way. So the other thing, though, that I want to bring up is that actually going through this, I do not see a ton of parallels exactly with the previous chapter, aside from, like, Darius basically makes, at the end of chapter 6, the annunciation that the God of Daniel is the living God, and his kingdom will not be destroyed, and it talks about the Son of Man, his kingdom will not be destroyed. All the empires will serve and obey him, in the same way that Darius in chapter 6 is like, all peoples need to be tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, which probably, well, trembling and fearing was what people kind of just did back then in general with different monarchies and stuff. But really to recognize that the God of Daniel is the living God, enduring forever. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really curious, and you can feel free to comment down below if you have an idea about, say, like what that one horn is that was uttering great boasts in the fourth beast and stuff. Like if that is high, I don't know. Yeah, I as of now can't even think about, I can't really picture any particular figure in history who that could be specifically representing, but I don't know. It could easily, I mean, I could think of a bunch of different people who've boasted against God and stuff, but I don't know particularly of what it would be necessarily referring to, and there definitely seems to be a sense of all the empires serving and obeying God, and obviously that is kind of not happening right now, so it seems like there is a future aspect to it, but it also may be symbolic in the sense that Jesus came and accomplished his work, and so sure, not everything is finalized, but it's it's getting to that point, so to speak. It's on the way, and so it's like the text might be treating it as though it's already happening, even though it's not happening in reality right this moment, if that makes any sense at all. But anyway, before we finish up, yeah, let me just see if there's any things I can see of good parallels between chapter 6 and 7. There's of course, there's the lion imagery in both. There's the imagery of, or the notion of God being the true God. Kind of Darius was worship me, and it seems like Darius was probably not as messed up as the boastful king who's represented by the horn in chapter 7 here seems to be, especially given that Darius didn't want Daniel to be executed, but I don't know, because I really don't think that the horn there was representing Darius, but maybe, I don't know, maybe if okay, so this is interesting. What if the griffin, the first beast, because it says it was set up on 2 feet like a man, and a human mind was also given to it. It makes me think of back in chapter 4, where God gave Nebuchadnezzar his human mind back, so to speak, after he had been like an animal. So if that lion represents Nebuchadnezzar, then I don't know, maybe would the next beast, the bear, represent Belshazzar, who is the current king when Daniel has this vision, and the one with the writing on the wall but I don't know, we don't know too much about him. But then the leopard being King Darius, which who has then the fourth beast kind of yet to come in the chronology. But I don't know. So I think that is about it. I might in my free time just kind of, well, I might wait until we get further on, but because I am curious other things that people might have to like point to the parallels between chapter 6 and 7, but as again, I like kind of looking at things for myself and seeing what's all up. So anyway, join us next month and we will be going through more visions, or at least a vision, maybe it's just one, but in chapter 8. And yeah, we will see you again next time. Thank you so much for watching. Drop your comments down below as always, and have a fabulous day, alright?